Swapping gear around can be a big pain in the butt, especially when there's so much content in the game that requires you to constantly shift gear around to some of your best champs, like Faction Wars Hard, Curse City, or even if you're near to the game, just across all the clan bosses, Doom Towers, any sort of restrictive content, whatnot, and so forth. So in today's video, I'm going to teach you guys how to set up your gear sets, the presets, in order to make sure that you guys save as much time as you can swapping all of your gear around your champions. Welcome to J-Raids, and let's jump into today's video of how I want to talk about how you guys should be thinking about how you set up your global and your champion presets, what it's going to look like, show you guys some examples of how I might shift things around for faction wars or things like that, and just try to set you guys up for success when you guys are constantly swapping around your gear and just making sure that you have your gear at the end of the day. So really, the main thing that breaks it down is thinking about your core roster. So for me, that is just going to be all the champs that I use within PvP as well as PvE. And then, so these are going to be the main champions that I typically have the best gear on at pretty much all times. Of course, from the PvP side of things, I do like to keep a little bit of a tab here with Arena Build 1, but all these champions here have on my best Arena gear. And then for, champions like Mikage, or what's another example that I actually use? Senna. Oh, she currently doesn't have any gear on, but because I've just been swapping it around. But champions like these that I would use in the PvP or PvE, things like Klazak, right? Very strong PvE champions that I use constantly between either Chimera or Hydra or things like that. These are going to be the core champions that I have my best gear on in their sort of champion presets. So I have presets set that are ready to use whenever possible across all of my champions that I use. So these are the foundation to your overall presets. It is going to be the best gear that you want all in one place on one champion at one time. For me, that's this set over here. I have like a nice feral build on my Galathir. As you can see, just as I'm kind of clicking through some of these champions, I have very explicit champion presets for my gear. And of course, this is going to fall into every single one of my actual core team champions. Again, your PvE and your PvP champions. Now, what do you want to do when you start wanting to swap gear around, right? Say you're going to Faction Wars, normal or hard or whatever that might be, want to swap your gear around. Well, how do you really go from having one preset on a champion to making sure that you can have the right presets on the right champions when you need to? So of course, when you're using like a raid optimizer, Hell Hades, Gestural, whatever the tool might be, you find a nice preset you like for your champion, you go down here and you press save as champion preset. Of course, that only goes over here in your own champion. But what I like to do as well is to save the exact same preset that I use for my best champions, my core team, as a global preset as well. So you can see over here, I have this big amalgamation of presets that you'll notice that fall under, some of my core champions as well. For example, you can see that I have like my ninja set here. I have a set for my Crocat, and these are very PvE sets, right? I have a feral set. I have these are kind of broken up because they get kind of mixed up. But I have a set for my Fabian. I have a set for my Crixia. I have multiple 9-piece Mercurial sets. I have all my nuker sets down here. But again, it's a little bit of amalgamation because they haven't really been updated since I've been swapping and upgrading sort of gear around. So let's walk through a little bit of a workflow. Let's say I want to take my ninja build, right? He is in a 6-piece Merciless and a 2-piece Zeal, one of the better setups for PvE. And I want to equip him onto a champion that I would use for Faction Wars Heart. So I would go in here, I would create a global preset. And then I guess there's already a preset made for this one. And then let's say today is orcs or something, right? Well, that's kind of a bad example because I kind of already have it. But today's barbarians. So I'll go into the champions, and then when I'm ready to go, Thor is going to be that sort of champion that I carry over into my best ninja build, right? So then I'll pretty much go into the global presets wherever I save the ninja build, whether it's this one or any of the other ones. I'm going to use the global preset to build equip. And then of course, what I'd like to do is, because these are champions I use on a fairly regular basis, even though sometimes they might not have gear sets on, I'm also going to come in and save this as a champion preset. So imagine I didn't have these before. I'll just delete these just to make this a little bit more clear, right? So imagine I didn't have these before. I would come in here. I would give my Thor the global preset that I saved over from my ninja, and then I would come back here, and now I can save as a champion preset. This is kind of an extra step, but I find it's easier to have one champion preset to go off of rather than having to scroll through 35 global presets and try to find the one that I want. And you're going to notice this for pretty much all of my core faction wars and just faction wars champions in general. You know, I have like 5, 6, 7 per each faction. So that can get quite tedious if I'm wanting to swap gear around. For example, my Loki has his own champion preset here, and it's just a mix of the gear that I throw on my Fabian, right? So again, I would have went in, saved my Fabian gear set as a global preset. Let's actually do this now, because this is a little bit outdated, right? You can see that I'm kind of breaking a piece off of Crixia here in order to make this preset. But of course, my Fabian himself is in a slightly different gear set, right? So what is essentially happening is I had a global preset at some point. I didn't update the global preset based off of my new current build on my Fabian. So again, I'm going to come in here, save as a global preset, and now this is the most up-to-date set that I use on my Fabian. And now I'm going to use that and throw it on my Loki, for example. I'm going to delete this as well, and then I can just grab my preset off of Fabian, come here, save it as a champion preset, and now it's on both champions. And that's kind of the copy paste sort of formula that you start to use to populate your global presets and your champion presets. I think at the end of the day, if you continue doing this, your global presets becomes fairly useless because you'll only be going through the champion presets as you go. But as you get more champions that you do want to save some of these better presets onto, it's good just to have this sort of living library. Of course, in my case, you just saw that some of the presets are a little bit outdated. You can see like across the board where especially when it comes to my nukers, because I'm kind of shifting gear around as I sort of get better pieces. You'll see here, like this used to all 6 of these pieces used to be on my Marius, but now it's kind of broken up a little bit. These pieces all used to be on my Alil, but again, I've kind of moved them around. So I wouldn't mind updating these at some point, but they're fairly good enough where it honestly isn't that biggest deal for me. But as you saw, if I want to like update this preset, right, I would just delete this because it's old. This is my Alil preset. So I'll find my Alil. And then I'll come in and save my Alil gear as a global preset. Although I think I kind of screwed this one up, but this one is so specific to my Alil because it's like a feral build. But again, just same thing. I'll just save as a global preset, and then now I have the most up-to-date preset kind of swimming around. And then, it's the same as my most recent one here. I'm gonna just clean these up as well because those ones are older presets as well. But again, that's the sort of pattern that you want to take when you're thinking through your champions. So the idea is to sort of get into this habit where, if you have to swap things around in your faction wars hard, build out the preset on your core champion, and then think about what sort of gear sets you want on. Thor, of course, would want to get my ninja gear set, right? They're both PvE nukers that function off of the same sets. My Loki functions very well with Fabian's gear, right? Because it has speed and it has accuracy. Armand's kind of same thing, where he has this preset that I use on my Crixia. Now Crixia is a little bit of an odd one because Crixia converts resistance to accuracy, so having a full resistance Armands wouldn't really get the same effect because I'm not building any accuracy, right? But again, same deal. You save the preset from Crixia as the global preset, you save it as a champion preset once you equip it onto Armands, and then you can just go off the champion presets. because it's so much nicer and cleaner to look at, right? But you know, I'll just go example. So these are the 5 champions that I run in my Faction Wars hard. I have Operdin. He has this gear. So this is the one that I usually put on my Senna, for example. And then the last one is Haikatun, but she just has on a filler set, which is nice. I have a few odd filler sets that, you know, if I find that it's just stuck on one champion, not the end of the world. So just imagine that, blah, blah, blah. I run through the faction, I clear the faction, great. Now, this is the habit that you also want to be getting into after you sort of do your sort of dailies that require you to shift gear around, because the one thing I absolutely dread is after Faction Wars hard, I'm like ready in the mood to go into some live arena. I queue into a matchup, and then 5 of my champions don't have gear. So this is why I have my champion tags, especially for my arena, because it's so much more frustrating for me to go into a fight without the right gear set on. If I go into a dungeon, maybe I lose around 20-40 energy, not the biggest deal. But if I go into a live arena game, I go through the entire process of drafting and then playing only to realize there that I'm gonna lose because I forgot to add my gear back. That becomes a little bit annoying for me. So very, very good practice to get into is once you're done, or once, or not necessarily, you don't have to do it right after you finish like your Faction Wars to swap everything on, but every time before you go into the content that you want to make sure you have all your gear on, especially if you can group your champions by a sort of champion tag. I'll just click through one by one and see, oh, my Crixie doesn't have gear on because, you know, I had to lend some of that gear to Armons in order to do Faction Wars, and then I just click through again, and then next champion, Fabian, right? Because I had to give Loki all of Fabian's gear. Again, what else? Anything else? No, at least from a, but sometimes you can see that there's just an odd piece missing here and there. Operdin took this random glove that I keep on my Brogni, even though you don't use Brogni all that much. Where did Rhodos's shield go? I was on Crocat because I use Crocat for Hydra or something. So you can see how fast that sort of process was in just not only just swapping gear onto my champions for Faction Wars, but also just having a very organized champion tab, so that when I have to go into arena, I'm like, okay, I just go down the line, make sure that all my champions have the gear back, and if they don't, I have a really simple, quick preset to kind of go into. Yeah, you know, I'd probably do this like once, twice a day, because maybe I'm like before and after like daily resets and things like that. But once you get into the rhythm of things, it becomes pretty snap fast and quick. Of course, when it comes to PvE things, you know, like Ninja missing a few points of gear isn't the biggest deal, or you can catch it fairly early, especially in something like Chimera, for example. So, you know, for me, it's less of a pain if my Ninja's missing gear. But again, I just have the preset and it's like, okay, Thor stole all my gear. But I'll just go ahead with this preset and I can kind of fill it in. And then, you know, I can do the same mental thing where if I'm going into like my Sand Devil team, right? I have Fenax. I know I want to put Fenax into Sand Devil preset, and then, you know, I want to put my Lydia into her Feral set, but now I also have the accessories I need to worry with. For example, I actually want to update this. Well, I can update this live for you guys, but I want to update this one Feral preset just so I don't have to remove the gloves off of my Galathir, especially for this one sort of fight where it really doesn't matter what sort of Feral gloves I have on as long as it's leading the Feral set. I'm just going to do this, and then it gives me a little bit less headache so I don't have to touch the preset on Galathir. So, you know, very minor sort of things that you can do to optimize a few things here and there. And then, you know, I want to make sure I have my 9-piece Feral set on to my Mad Hatter. And then just, you know, some champions I just don't move any gear off because it's so specific, fast, 100% crit rate, 9-piece protection set with attack, right? So specific to Mikage, where I know like Mikage is a champion I'm never really going to move gear off of. So that's kind of the thing, right? That's really the sort of basics of your overall gear set. There's one more thing, and that is the auto equip feature, which for the most part I don't really use because, you know, it's fairly bad, but almost very specifically for something like Curse City, I actually find it quite helpful where I can just randomly throw things on. Let's take this one for example, right? I have some 60 champions. These are fairly, as long as I get some semblance of gear onto these champions, it's probably okay. So my Krisk, I'll just put him back into this build because he'll be used later. But for example, like Anaxia, right? Well, let's just throw on a random amulet just so that we have it. But I can use the auto equip feature here, and this saves me like 3 clicks. And it takes gear that is in my vault that I know I don't have on other champion presets. Or if I do, it'll quickly remove them. But like, look how middling this build is. Like 257 speed, good amount of defense. This one's actually one of the better builds. But like just keep this in mind, 5.6, 257, 189. And you can compare it to the build that I normally use on like a Marius, for example. Like this build. Well, honestly, that's not bad. It actually might be optimized for damage. It's hard to say. You know what? That build's actually not that bad. I take that back. For that one turned out quite nice. So I'll do the same thing again for my Sepulchre Sentinel. I'll do the same for my Deathless. Looks like this guy already had a good amount of pieces here, and then I'll do the same for this Visix. I had to move my Visix out. That's whatever. And then yeah, I can kind of run, even though this is a very mid par sort of gear level comparative to my account, it's fairly decent enough where for some content like Curse City, Doom Tower, Secret Rooms, it saves me like a click or two. And then these champions have gear on for future times that I need to use them, and they're usually sitting in gear that are just kind of rotting away, collecting dust in my collection. So ultimately, like, this auto gear function has its own use. Normally I wouldn't use it, and I wouldn't really advise it for newer players out there, especially if you're trying to min-max your sort of gear, and which is more so relevant for arena, or if you're trying to speed tune to a specific speed for things like clan boss and things like that. But this is fairly decent. And then if I need to use better gear for these champions, if say for example Sepulchre Sentinel, I run in a 9-piece protection set for Faction Wars Hard or something like that. I don't have a champion preset here, but then I can go into my repository of global presets. I find like this sort of 9-piece protection set. I'm like, oh yeah, that looks good. And now I have a champion preset ready for Sepulchre Sentinel, and then I can just get rid of all of the gear that is kind of just junk gear for now. But again, you can see that like Sepulchre Sentinel 69% crit rate. Like, what is this? Like 339 accuracy. I guess she needs accuracy. But like this build is like kind of whatever. It's not crit capped. It's not that fast by any means. Good survivability, but short, right? Like, because I know as long as the champions have gear on, I can do it. I'll show you an example where it kind of maybe doesn't work. Let me see. So as you can see here, Jetney, I use the auto equip here. Farrakhan, I use the auto equip. Let's just auto equip the Cross here. You can auto equip Yannicka. And then let's throw on some Ran. Oh, I can even auto equip accessories. Look at that. I didn't even know that. Yeah, okay. I don't know why I didn't know I couldn't auto-equip accessories, but let's see if this team can handle... This isn't even Soul Cross. It's not even like the most difficult part of Curse City, but you might still get caught off guard if you just, especially if you're trying to auto things, like maybe things don't line up, or these champions are like half booked too. Like these are not the cream of the crop champions as far as things go. And then the targeting, yeah, I would have liked to target Duchess, for example, right? So I can get rid of the reviver. That's a little upsetting. Okay, but that's fine. And Duchess doesn't even go for the revive. That's nice. Oh, okay, Kraus. Look at Kraus go. But again, yeah, so this is the kind of way to approach gearing your champions. You have your gear sets that on your core champions that you want to always be rotating around. And then for some of the lesser content in the game, whether it be Doom Tower, secret rooms, whether it be, oh, I might even lose this one. Uh-oh, because Arbiter's gonna revive. Uh-oh, that's kind of spooky. And yeah, you can see that this gear just wasn't good enough, or maybe like my targeting was poor. Uh-oh. Ooh. And you can see that like maybe like, okay, well, let's try it again. This is like the content that I would just like put on my phone, throw it down, and just kind of come back to it and see if it worked out. But you can see the limitations of the auto equip function here. And of course, if my champions were fully booked, like if this Jetney was booked, for example, I'm sure I wouldn't really be having a problem with this sort of very mid difficulty stage of our city. So this again, I'll let this run through, and hopefully I come out with the win this time. That's kind of annoying. Time didn't work out there, but let's see if... Okay. This will give us a few turns just to cycle through our abilities, and maybe this time it's gonna end up a little bit better. Okay, as long as the Krutraxa didn't get the kill on the Yannicka there. And I think this one looks a little bit better in terms of the sort of skill rotation that I used. Okay, that looks good. Yeah, why not get the kill there? And yeah, so that's how I like to think about the gear. This one looking much better, especially now that the Arbor goes into revive. And then I have an AoE coming here with my Jetney, potentially. And then bam, I'm able to kind of clear this. So even though I don't have to use my best gear, I can save some time with the sort of auto gear function. This is how you want to think about setting yourself up best for success. Of course, rotate around your core champion presets, and for content that you think you can clear without them, you can save a little bit of time with the auto equip. And then if I want to use Fracken for a future Curse City stage, he's in some gear already, so that saves me another click, right? So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Hope you guys found this video educational and helpful. If you guys enjoyed, feel free to like, subscribe to the channel. It helps me out a lot, and I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Happy 4th of July to my fellow Americans. I hope you guys had a nice bit of celebrations, fireworks, barbecues, whatnot. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. Love you guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out, guys, and take care.